I love what you said. The soul likes to whisper. Hello. Okay, we're talking about ego today. I have notes and everything. The idea is to talk not only about ego today. You look from Canada. I am. It's to talk about ego and how it relates to our reactivity in relationships and our triggers. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. What is ego? Does anyone have their own definition of what ego is? This feels like a school topic, but it's going to get really philosophical about what ego is. So, ego, this is the actual definition for ego, is a person's sense of self-esteem or importance, or a measure, like this is what I'm going to put on it, it's a measure of one's worth. So, when we say we have a big ego, we're showing that we have an inflated sense of self-esteem, or that we are inflating our worth. But ego, yeah, so it's basically just like somebody's way of seeing themselves, and to say that you have a big ego means that you have an inflated self-esteem, inflated self-worth. And we're going to talk about why that's an issue. We're going to talk about why that's an issue. So this is like the spiritual side of it. It's versus your higher self that kind of lets go of the I. Usually our ego is heavily identified. That's a bad word to use. Our ego heavily pushes us towards having an identity. So we think that we want to be fathers. We think that we want to be boyfriends. We think that we want to be players. Those are identities that we have. People with big egos are sometimes someone hiding something deeper. Yeah, we're going to talk about the triggers and reactivity for sure. Individuals learn to understand themselves and others in the world in increasingly complex ways. Agreed. AI says, ego talk, reactivity unpacked. But then does there have a self-ego and an outside ego, if that makes sense? Maybe. That does make sense to me. I think that the way we have our self-ego is energetically put out to the world. So if we have an inflated ego, even though we might think we're not putting it out, other people might be able to tell in other ways. So identity is how our ego ends up wounding us. When we hold on to the I am this, I am that, and not in a spiritual way, more like I am a student. So if I do things that are not studious, that's going to trigger me in some way. I am a good partner. Somebody tells me that I'm not a good partner, I feel triggered. Why are you telling me something that goes against my identity? I mean, I guess everything is quite literally related to this thing we called society. Yeah. And that's our identities. Usually they hold things within society, that society deems well. So society says that we have to be good partners, and to be a good partner means that you're only with one person, and that you get married, and that you have kids, and you have a career, and that's what makes you a good person. Then we relate our ego and identity to that thing, and when we step out of that thing, or we feel frustrated with that thing, we feel guilty. How do we define what's studious and not studious? Well, that's where things get interesting. What's the e-transfer? You could send me roses or send me gifts, and then my PayPal is Yogi Escape, YOGI Escape, one word. So first thing we're talking about is that we still need an ego. Like, although people demonize the ego, it's not actually like that bad of a thing. If you want to get a girlfriend, you should stick around and figure out more about your ego and your sense of self, because that's going to be something that helps you within relationships. And if you just focus on the other, well, that's a whole other thing. When we focus on the other, it's actually usually us focusing on ourselves, because we're thinking about what that person does for us and what it does for our ego. So, emotional intelligence, yes. Okay. I just have notes and they're so random. My first note is duality of needing it and also not being attached to it. So we need our ego, but we also need to detach from it. And this is going to be like the major theme that comes up tonight in ego talks, is the importance of detachment. So often we attach to things. So if we think about relationships, because we're going to talk about relationships. If we think about relationships, we get attached to our partners or the label that we have. So if, like, you have a girlfriend, okay, you are a boyfriend. That is an identity that you are holding. You also have the identity that you're in a relationship. What happens if that person breaks up with you? That identity shifts. More than likely, you're going to feel upset. You're going to feel triggered. All very valid feelings. It's happening. Like, the reason we get angry about that or feel triggered or react about that is because our ego was like, I had this identity and I was very attached to it, and now I don't have it anymore. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is not the live for you. Like, this is not the live for you. We're talking about ego. We're talking about reactivity. So there's the duality of we need the ego because the ego is going to do something good for us, which we're going to talk about. But we need to detach from the ego as well. We need to detach from those identities. So the other thing that I have a note on is we're not wanting our ego to be too small because we need self-esteem. Self-esteem is one of the basic needs. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-esteem is a basic need. So we still need our self-esteem. We still need an ego because it pushes us to do things that are actually good for us. But we don't want it to be too big. We're not like, you know, I guess the joke of like having that loud revving engine that's just annoying everyone else. It's like you have a big ego, no one cares about you that much, or like focusing too much on the self when, again, no one cares. Another thing I'd like to put out is, you know, hopping into lives where people tell you what you should be doing. It's like no one cares what you think that much to like listen, you know? So like, why do you have such a big ego that you think your opinion of somebody matters so much? Something to think about. For example, identities of family, and then when you lose someone, it's attachment. Exactly. So like, my dog passed away last month, and my dad is the type of person who is detached when it comes to loss in that way. And he's just like, this is a part of life. And that is detachment. I was never the identity that I was a dog owner. So I don't have that sense of like losing that attachment when it's gone. I don't know if you do this already, but you could like record your lives. It's all recorded actually, automatically. So I can actually upload this to YouTube after if I want. Yeah. Thank you for that, Keith. I will end up going on YouTube to do these, but I'm just doing it here because it's easy. Yeah. It's all, every live that anyone does, TikTok saves it, I think, for 30 days. Just so you know. So whatever you say, or whatever somebody says to you, if they like say your number out loud, or like you say something weird and they say something to you, it's saved. Okay. Why is ego good? Ego is good because it protects us. It is actually a protective mechanism to hold identities sometimes. Think about the person who is the gym bro. They go to the gym almost every day. Going to the gym is really healthy for them. Might not be healthy for everyone, but that's a whole other topic of discussion. But say it's really healthy for them. Then that's a great thing. Like, that is so... If your dad is detached, he never cared. So that's not the same thing as caring. Caring, you could actually like love a dog, love somebody so deeply, but in the end, understand that loss is loss and that it happens, and be detached. I'm not saying the Google comment out loud because then my home is going to be like talking. Yeah, define care. And that's the most important thing because love can be defined in so many ways. what one person does to love somebody is not going to be the same as what somebody else does to love somebody. Somebody could give you a hard time and tell you, like, eat this way and, like, work out every day. And, like, okay, think about the person who's like, you're getting fat, you should work out every day. But that is the way they show love because they actually care about your health. Is that a very loving thing to say? No, it's not. But that could be how that person shows love. I would identify with the Oxford definition. What is the Oxford definition? I think it has to do with showing affection, doesn't it? Maybe. I don't know. So, acknowledging that it's trying to protect you. So, again, if somebody's going to the gym and they're like, I'm a gym bro, that's actually something that could be really healthy for their ego. To identify. So, for me, when I started, like, doing yoga, I said I'm going to do yoga 3 times a week, and that's my goal. And then I very quickly started identifying with being a yogi. And because I identified with that, I actually made a point to be more disciplined with my practice. You also feel some sort of like guilt when you don't show up to do the things that you said you were going to do. So your ego and guilt actually push you to show up in certain ways that could be healthy. Could be. Okay, so that's the good side of ego, is that it protects you. It protects you into doing things that could be good for you. Could be. The bad side of ego is that, like, feeling that guilt and shame could actually be keeping you in survival mode. Perception is like a whole thing that ego breaks up to. This is a great point. Let's talk about it. It all matters what you think because your perception of things should be based on you. And when we think about the world only through our lens, that is our ego getting in the way. Because what we also can do is be able to empathize and think about what other people might be feeling. And that's like very good intelligence to have, is to be able to step into empathy. I watched this video online and I love it. It's in my reposts actually. And this guy was like, how men will say that women aren't logical and then tell them that, like, I don't, like, why are you feeling that way? That's not logical. But really, logic also pertains to being able to understand why somebody feels a certain way. So there's emotional logic. Okay, you get broken up with, it makes sense to be sad. It's almost illogical to not be sad in that situation. Like, why wouldn't you be? So there's that whole thing that, like, it actually is kind of helpful to have empathy. And empathy is, again, based on what you said earlier. React is how someone else would feel. Yeah, and not necessarily react, but be able to think about it. So the idea of empathy is like being able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else and ponder, explore how that person might feel. Because you never know for sure unless you ask them. Actually, you never know for sure. Even if they tell you something, how do you know what's true? It's relative to the others, I guess. Yeah? Yeah, it is. So, yeah, we still need an ego. My question to ponder now is, what part of you feels the need to control or to be perfect? I love you said you're a Virgo right at this moment. What part of you feels the need to control or to be perfect? So, for example, I feel the need to be perfect with the way that I look when I show up online. That is ego. That's very much ego. With what I post online, like sometimes I don't want to let somebody else post for me because I'm like, oh, but you don't have my vision and my brand and what I would post. So, you feel like you want to control being observant or be perfect at being observant? Or like, what do you mean by that? I don't feel the need to be perfect nor important because of us just being everything. Oh, I don't feel the need to be perfect or imperfect because of us just being everything. Interesting. Anyone else in the room want to chime in? What do you feel the need to control or be perfect at? This could be something so simple like somebody's chewing too loudly and I feel the need to like tell them about it, or I want them to stop. Like that is a form of wanting to control your environment. Showing up to go to the gym so that you could be a certain weight is a form of control. And it's all about you thinking about how you look to somebody else. Perfect chat moderation. Do you see how long that took me to process? So the idea of me being you or you being me in this whole idea of just existing, I guess. No, so we're talking more about like, what do you feel the need to control in your life? To have control over. In a relationship, it could be like, I don't want my partner to like swear in front of my friends because that makes me look a certain way and I want to control that. Or like my partner leaves his socks on the floor and I get really pissed off about that and I would like to control that. So, or even like, this is a hard one, how you raise your kids could be a form of control. So it is a hard conversation. I was having this with my mom because I was like, no matter what you do, like you can't control what happens to anyone else, even to yourself, but there's no sense of control. We think our ego gives us the illusion that we have control over things. We have control over nothing. And people want to have faith and hope because they want to like have this idea of a future. Manifestation could even be boiled down to a form of wanting to control your future. It's crazy. It's crazy. Not saying it's a bad thing. And that's the thing. We're not saying ego is bad. Maybe having a big ego is something you want to come back to the middle on. We don't want a small ego. We don't want a big ego. We want just to have an ego that is there, that we have balanced self-esteem about. Okay. Are we ready? How your ego impacts relationships. We're going to talk about relationships. This is going to be interesting. If anyone is in a relationship in the room, I want you to say yes. If you are. The other thing to think about is that we are all in relationships. Every single one of us. If you have friends, if you have family, unless you're like a hermit in a cave, which you're not because you're on TikTok, we all have relationships. This is because of their ego or it's not. I mean, like, technically you could say that everything is because of ego because it's the I doing something. Ego is just I, me. That's it. So in the sense of the definition of the word, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, that is what ego is defined as. If we think about ego in a spiritual sense, the ego is the I. It's the self. Because we particularly don't make these decisions. I mean, you make decisions all the time in your life. To think that you have zero control, let's talk about control again. To think that you have zero control over the decisions in your life means that you have zero action. And we all have choices. Let's call it choices. We all have choices in life that we have to make, and that makes up our ego. It's defined on this thing we called identity. Yes, it is. It is. But it's like you can't go through the world and hold no identity. You can detach from identities, but you still have an identity. So some people would say that your choices have been made for you before you make them. Some people do have that argument that like everything that you are doing, it makes sense. Even if you think about, our phones listening to us, when really it's just like it's so easy to track your behavior over time. Hi Libra King. Downtown Six Side is a crazy name, but very funny, very amusing. So, yeah, you can say that all your choices have been made for you. That is the idea that you have zero free will, which means that you're on the camp of like nothing matters. If nothing matters, you might have actually a small ego. So we don't necessarily want to be big ego or small ego. We want to come to the middle. It's understanding that nothing matters and everything matters at the same time. The second book is done and it is out. My glasses are from Bon Look. Great question. I don't think you could see my book on my shelf. It's right here. Yay. Oh, I don't know if you could see it fully in the live. But yeah, that's my book, Feelings-Based Living. Ego versus empathy, AI says. Okay, so how ego impacts relationships. So we're going to talk about detachment, but the first idea is that ego can block intimacy. So to be intimate with somebody, we have to we don't have to be, but like the idea of being vulnerable with somebody could mean shedding some of that ego. Shedding how you want to look in front of somebody and just being yourself. I think the biggest takeaway is to really step into your authenticity and to not think about, well, you're going to think about it, but this is where the duality and language makes it really hard to discuss these things. But essentially it's like we want to shift from just who I think I am to just being ourselves. I could think that I'm a gamer girl and then my identity pushes me to show up and game every single week on lives, every single day to play games. But really it's just that I enjoy playing games. I'm not going to show up to do it every day just because I enjoy it. I could show up sometimes. I don't have to make an identity out of that. Reading is an identity I have. I am a reader, and because of that, I show up to read almost every single day. When I don't show up to read, I do feel a little guilty, and my guilt pushes me more towards reading, which is not a bad thing. But say that I am like in the busiest season of my life, I have no time to read, or even that I'm writing a book. When you're writing a book or when you're actually writing a project, sometimes they recommend like not consuming and just doing the output. That would be a time where it's like, well, this identity actually isn't serving me. The identity of being a yogi when I was writing my book did not serve me. I felt guilty for not doing yoga. I felt guilty for not like doing all these things. And it's like, well, that wasn't a useful identity for me to have. And my ego put me in survival mode when it came to yoga. It's not even the point of it. Hello and greetings from Ireland. Cool. So I think it's hard for me to look at ego as big or small because of the idea of limits. I think, therefore, I am. Good job for thinking. I mean, each person has an idea of what is the limit of certain things. You sound like a podcast. I am. But understanding it's technically limitless. We can't classify this as being bigger or smaller. So with the ego, the sense of self, the idea of it being bigger or smaller is like inflated ego would be to think of yourself as super important. Whereas, like, to not think of your, because it's self-importance, to not think of yourself as important at all. So you were saying, like, everything just happens. I don't have a choice. I don't make decisions. That's actually not having a strong ego. And strength is an interesting thing because you can have a strong ego without it being big. You can just be so sure of who you are and in your self-esteem. And like your ego being bruised is a whole other thing to think about. What's inflated and what's being super important. That you matter in everything. Somebody hurts you and it's about you. So, I have an example, but I don't know if I want to out this person. Somebody I was talking to in the past, let's say a few months, they were dating somebody who put on their story something about how they were dating somebody ugly. And this person was so fixated on this. Like, they were like, who is she calling ugly? All this stuff. And I'm like, how do you know it's about you? Like, she could be seeing other people. This doesn't have to be about you. Unless she specifically said it was. But she could also just be, like, messing with you. Why did it change how you felt about yourself for somebody to talk about you in a certain way? The world revolves around us. I mean, it can. And that's something I want to say on this live, that you are both supposed to be the main character of your life, and you're supposed to realize you don't matter at all. And that's a hard thing to, like, have both of those things, but it's like they're both true. We need to be able to hold on to opposites in our mind. So, blocking intimacy, being vulnerable, being your authentic self. I think it's so important to, just be able to change in relationships. And being able to change is a part of not having a big ego. If you think that your partner looks a certain way and is supposed to always look that way. So, like, you have a partner and you're like, oh, she's so beautiful. And then she hurts herself. She gets a scar on her face. And all of a sudden, the image of you changes. Because when people see you, they see your wife with a scar. That upsetting you or triggering you or making you react in a certain way is your ego saying, the way that I look to the world has changed. Authenticity 100. I studied psychology, not at Oxford, in your life versus in society. I mean, they both go hand in hand. Your life is impacted by society. If you're like, I want to make $1 this year, your life is impacted by society. Making money at all, if you make money, your life is impacted by your ego and by society. That is just a part of life. Money is a whole other topic with ego that we're not getting into tonight. Maybe when we talk about like something like emotional, like nervous system healing, that makes sense to talk about it then. Okay, so in relationships, finding that partner that you're like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. Like, I want to be with them because they're gorgeous. That is ego. That is ego. Liking somebody for their personality is more of an authentic connection. Life is weird, but I love it. I agree. Life is so weird, but I don't know if I love it. It's just, it is what it is. What do you think of reframing the ego? Will it help in any way? Reframing it to what? So we've already talked about how the ego, I don't know when you came in, but the ego, how it's not a bad thing, and how the ego is your sense of self-esteem and self-importance. The ego is not a bad thing. We need it. We need identities. They push us to do sometimes good things. They also sometimes make us feel guilty. It's definitely not a bad thing. It just is what it is. And that's a little bit of what Keeve is talking about. It is what it is. We just want to be authentic in our relationships. Language can never describe the concepts of like a higher spiritual understanding of something. So we just have to have ways to communicate with other people about these things. We could just sit and meditate and communicate to source about these things, but ultimately we don't want it to just stay with us. We would want to spread our spiritual learnings sometimes, because we want to spread love. And this is what this guy's talking about. I've reframed the ego into love compass to redirect me towards soul making soul decisions. So what does that have to do with the ego still? Because that's like a really great reframe, but the ego is still the sense of self and self-importance. And like, how does the ego fit into your idea of making soul decisions? I have a big ego. I'm really trying everything to lean more towards love and soul. Ooh. See, the fact that somebody could like say they have a big ego and they're trying to move towards love and soul, I more believe that you are closer to love and soul because you have awareness, and because you like, awareness is the thing that moves us towards making changes. So I like that. How is my Libra showing? I mean, my Libra showing because I'm like, let's look at this side and let's look at this side. The justice of both sides. Ego is king. Without ego, we are nothing. We are nothing, and we are everything. Without potatoes, I am nothing. See, I can't eat potatoes, and I don't think I'm nothing. I have a sense of esteem, and this is the thing, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-esteem is a basic need that you have to have before thriving, before reaching, what is the last step? Oh man, this is going to bother me now. What is the tip of Maslow's hierarchy? What's the point of living this one life we get if we aren't selfish and want the best for ourselves? How do you know we only get one life? How do you know we only get one life? And what is the best for ourselves? How do we know that we know the best for ourselves? If we only see what, like, this is a form of control that we were talking about. If we only are seeing this bubble, and let's say the universe, God, whoever you want to put there, is seeing that we can make it out here in the bubble, but we're like, no, this is the best for ourselves, then our ego is going to block the abundance that we could have. I originally had self-actualization at the top. Ooh, originally. That's the only one I write about, so. Oh, I did not know that. He later added self-transcendence. I did not know that. Because like when I studied in school, we just studied. It wouldn't have changed in the last 10 years, though. I don't know. Anyways, so right before self-actualization, even including self-transcendence at the top, I studied psychology in school. Done studying for a long time now. So we need self-esteem before we need esteem. Sorry, not self-esteem. We need esteem. We need to believe that we are worthy. We need to believe that. Let's go back to that example of that guy who some girl called him ugly, and his world like shattered because this girl called him ugly that he was seeing. And it's like, well, one, why'd you make it so much about yourself? If you actually had a strong ego, if you actually had esteem, what somebody said about you would not matter. If you had esteem and your wife got injured and had a scar, you would not care. That those things, how you look to other people, would not matter. If you had esteem and you lost your job, that wouldn't matter to you as much as somebody who didn't have esteem. I know somebody who just lost their job and they're like, oh, perfect sign for me to start my own business. Versus somebody who would lose their job and be like, my life is going to fall apart now because I don't know what to do. My identity was so tied to my job. And you see how much longer it takes when we have to work through our ego to get to the point of like, I need to find a new job. I need to not be upset about this. I should start my own business. Versus the person who didn't have the big ego and could just be like, I need to start my own business. This was a sign. From my point of view, the ego likes to snare the intellect with negativity sometimes. Is this correct? So, from if I understand what you're saying or asking correctly, yes. The ego tends to be a more negative thought pattern because it's wrapped up in identity and it's wrapped up in a let me think about what other people think of me type of thing. So typically our ego pushes us to do things out of maybe guilt instead of out of love. Whereas like, okay, I'm doing this thing because I am a yogi versus I'm doing this thing because I'm spiritually inclined to do it. Those are two very different energies to show up to something. You can get my book on Kindle, Amazon, and Kobo. Amazon's the best place to find it. If you're in Canada or if you have a Kobo, then you can find it on Kobo. Feelings-Based Living by Amira Sookram. My name is at the top. Do you understand the idea of everything in the human's eye is illusion? Yeah, so like anything that we have an identity of is also an illusion. And this is where we try and control the illusion that other people have of us or their perception of us. The soul likes to whisper, soul sends messages, and is always speaking to you underneath negativity. Yes. The soul, I love what you said. The soul likes to whisper and it sends messages. So in my book, I talk about how the soul sends us messages through our feelings. And most people don't sit and pause with their feelings long enough to hear those messages. The soul whispers. And that's why when we quiet our brains through meditation, through getting into a flow state, through showering, like through those things, we hear messages from the soul. One thing maybe learn about this idea of positivity, negativity, and neutral. So while we're talking about things being positive, negative, and neutral, we're talking about the energetic charge of it. We're not talking about good, bad, and nothing. Because that's a whole topic of discussion that there's nothing good or bad. Can you speak on heartbreak, please? I need it. Yes, we're going to talk a bit about ego and relationships, and heartbreak will be in it. Hi, Michael. In her profile bio. Thank you, Lex. What's spirituality? To me, I see it as being open and curious, but to other people, they could see it as something else. It's to question, it's to explore, to not necessarily be told something, but to find those answers yourself. What purposes does both soul and ego serve within the developing of your intellect? So the ego is your self-esteem, your self-importance. Your soul or your higher self is the detachment of the I. Detachment from your, I don't want to say detachment from yourself, but it kind of is. It's like detaching from who you believe yourself to be and just being. That's the soul. We're just being. Being our authentic selves isn't something that we have to try so hard to be. It's not like we're working against all these things stacked against us. We're just, I am. Not I am a doctor, I am a daughter, I am a mother, I am a father, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am nice, I am kind. Those are also ego. Is ego more so about performance and the soul is rather about connection? If so, why is this? I would agree the ego is about performance. It's about how you look to others. It's also about how you look to yourself. Others might not care about you performing, but your ego is like, I have to perform because I'm worried about what other people think of me, even if they aren't thinking about me. So again, that person that called that person ugly. Okay, so guy dating a girl, he got called ugly. That's like, I needed to perform for that person. I wanted to be beautiful for them. That person probably doesn't care. I mean, they cared enough to post about it, but like they still like that person. It's like how a girl will be like, I like a guy a little ugly, and the guy's like so offended. And it's like, but I literally said I like you like that. Why is your ego upset? Whereas connection would just be like, oh, you like me. I like your glasses, thank you. The soul just is. Agreed. It all just is. If we say that it all just is, we also have to have the opposite thought that it all just isn't. That might go over a lot of people's heads. That's okay. Gotta keep your ego in check at all times. I mean, I wouldn't say at all times because that is also a form of control. But we have to check in with our ego. Okay, what was our next topic? So I talked about being open, curious, and how that's detached. Vulnerability without expectation. So again, being your authentic self, detaching from what other people are going to think of you and just being yourself. Interesting conversations with you. Thank you. Yeah. Being vulnerable is just being able to show up and be yourself. And it is a hard thing to do. There's usually a vulnerability hangover, as Brene Brown likes to call it. I don't know if she called it that or somebody else did. But it's this idea that like I was vulnerable with somebody, I shared myself fully. Now I'm like a little, my ego's like, why did I do that? I'm pulling back a bit. This is a little awkward because I was just so much myself, and now I'm worried. Now I'm worried about connection. Now I'm worried about like, did I say too much? That is also a form of like the ego trying to protect us from being hurt. Somebody wanted to talk about heartbreak. Your ego is trying to protect you from heartbreak. While we are protecting ourselves from heartbreak, sometimes we also protect ourselves from love. We don't necessarily want to be living in survival mode like that. We want to be able to connect and love freely. And that means, as somebody said, keeping your ego in check. It also means like sitting with your soul and what your soul wants. We want to connect. There's a loneliness epidemic out there. It's because people are having trouble connecting. They're having trouble releasing the identities that are put on them to just connect openly. I will not sit here and be like, I don't have trouble with this. I think in dating, I definitely have trouble with this. I think about what other people are going to think of me. I think about not necessarily who I'm dating, but like, what would my parents think? What would my friends and family think? Would they like this person? Do they fit into the life that I have built for myself? Those are all ego things versus just showing up authentically and like, I have a connection with this person. None of those things matter. What their job is doesn't matter. Like, whether or not they can care for children in the future doesn't matter. Like, those things, egotic things do matter because we live in a society. So this is the balance of like, we live in a society, we have to survive in society. How do we find that middle ground between understanding that I have a soul, my soul has its purpose, I have an ego, my ego has its purpose too. We all have trouble with dating and meeting new friends and people. Yeah, let's take dating out of it. Meeting new friends as an adult is a very hard thing to do. Okay. How emotional reactions stem from wounded ego parts. I don't even know where to go on this one. Damn. I have a friend, and the friend speaks to me in a certain way, and I don't like it. I think, oh, that's disrespectful. I wouldn't speak to somebody that way. And I react. I get mad at them for that thing. That is actually like my ego reacting, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter actually. The idea of respect actually doesn't matter as much as we think it does. If we respect ourselves, it's not going to matter for us to get respect from somebody else. Or like, parents who like want their children's respect. It's like people don't owe you respect. That is part of your ego thinking that you deserve it. Thinking I deserve something is part of the ego. Again, it's not a bad thing to have. It's not a bad thing to have. We should have standards for our lives and the people that we let into our lives. But we also have to understand that those standards can wound us in ways. Respect is earned. I think actually respect is just something we give ourselves. If I respect myself, the second I feel that somebody's energy doesn't align with me, I'll just leave it. They're not disrespecting me. They are who they are. It doesn't align with who I am. Do you see how that works? I hope that makes sense. So, in relationships, respect is just a term we use to classify certain things. Yeah, it classifies your boundaries. And most people, when their boundaries are crossed, want the other person to make up for it, when we just have to keep our own boundaries and either walk away, stand up for ourselves, say something about it, but like understand that like somebody crossing your boundary, that like it's not the worst thing. They're doing what is right for them, what they think they should do, and now you have to do what you think you should do. Our wounded ego feels the need to look a certain way to other people. And when we find out that we don't look a certain way to other people, we can feel wounded. So, an example, going out with somebody and me telling them that, like, hey, I didn't feel safe in this situation. This is why. Me saying it in a way that, like, I'm not mad. I'm just explaining how I felt, right? And they're like, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Like, and then, the biggest trigger is like, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. And then they pull back and they become avoidant. That is an emotional reaction. Or somebody who just over explains themselves. When it's just like, I was just telling you how I felt. There was no need to over explain. There's no need to avoid. We could just continue on with this relationship if neither of us felt triggered by a wounded ego. Because there will be times I feel unsafe. It has nothing to do with you. I'm telling you this so that we can move forward in our relationship. But you had a reaction. And that reaction led to disconnection. You know something, a dead end is not a dead end. We can always go through. Yep. Doesn't mean we should go through every dead end, but yep. But you telling them how you felt is also an emotional reaction. It definitely is. However, here's the thing. Actually, what's interesting about it is it can be perceived as an emotional reaction. So me feeling unsafe was the emotional reaction. Me communicating it to somebody was communication of expectations in relationships. So how does the ego impact relationships in dating? Let's talk about being defensive, our fear of rejection, and control. Oh, okay. Being defensive. The second I feel like I'm getting defensive now when I'm talking to somebody that I haven't been on a date with, or that I've been on one date with, I'm like, this isn't it. I should be able to connect with you. I don't want to defend myself. Yeah, if I feel my defensiveness coming up, like I have to defend myself and they're like activating my ego, I'm just like, this is not the connection I want to be in. Being defensive could be classified as being offensive, right? But it's like, if you don't know somebody, what's the point of being offensive or defensive? And that is the point. Your ego wants you to be on the offense or defense. You don't have to be. You could just fully step away from that thing. Don't waste your energy. Don't waste your time. But that's where our wounded ego comes from and steps in and is like, I need to defend myself. Is curiosity more ego-based or soul-based? Soul-based. Definitely soul-based. Curiosity is that detachment and being open to whatever comes. Ego change everything about it. I love curiosity. It's my passion. Curiosity is so fun. Definitely away from ego. So fun. Like when I tell you the times in my life where I was the most curious were the most fun times of my life. There's actually something about, I think it's like they've interviewed a bunch of people who were over the age of 100. And the one thing that they all had in common was that they were curious people. I have an ego, but it makes confident. And I think it comes from striving to be the best. Striving to be the best is 100% ego and thinking about what other people think of you. There is absolutely no higher soul purpose to being the best at anything. Striving alone is ego. We don't have to strive for anything in life. We could literally just like sit in the grass and enjoy the sun, and we would get more joy out of doing that than striving for something. Humans were not built to strive in this capitalist society that has been told. It is a lie that has been sold to us. The capitalist society never takes the human experience into account. Yes. Fear of rejection is ego. What do you have to fear rejection for? I say this as somebody who fears rejection so much, but if I am going to use my logical brain, what do you have to fear rejection for? What do you fear in rejection? Let's start there. Fear of embarrassment. Ooh, yeah, very real. What? Let's hear it. Let's hear it. What do you fear rejection from? And why do you feel the fear of embarrassment? What do you think you're going to embarrass yourself for? Our paranoia is subjective. We're going to talk about it. I already know the story I want to tell about fear of rejection. Why do you fear? We're not getting into that, Keith. Humans are born with emotions. That's what makes them react to situations. 1,000%. We're supposed to sit with our emotions. That doesn't mean they have to rule every area of your life, though. I wrote a book about feelings and listening to your feelings. There's no way I'm telling you not to feel your feelings. You should feel your feelings. But your feelings shouldn't impact every single part of your life. If you feel the need to react, what brings you to the point of reacting instead of responding? Public speaking. Ooh, okay. Okay, so fear of rejection. Let's go with the embarrassment. Let's go with public speaking. So let's go with that. How does ego impact our fear of rejection? We are talking about it in a dating sense, but I like this idea of like the fear of embarrassing yourself. Okay, you go on a first date with somebody and you were like, I have to smell good, I have to look good, I don't want to embarrass myself by like having BO or like not wearing something that they would like. Our fear of embarrassment, our fear of rejection is stemming from the ego. It's stemming from what we think we're going to look like to other people, which actually doesn't matter that much. There's a study that somebody was put out on a university campus wearing a really silly t-shirt. Like it was a silly t-shirt. And they were asked to tell the researchers, like, how many people did you think were looking at you? This person was like, everyone was looking at me. Like I was embarrassing myself. Everyone was looking at me. This t-shirt was embarrassing. And fear of embarrassment is actually, I like that you said fear of embarrassment next, because it's like, it's actually your fear of rejection. That everyone's going to reject me because I'm wearing something silly. The next day, they went around to campus students and they were like, do you remember seeing this person in this t-shirt? Very few, if not no one, was like, I remember that person. So that one person thought that everyone was thinking about them. That's their ego. And no one was thinking about them. People are so focused on their own lives and their own ego that it really doesn't matter what they think of you. Everyone is focusing on other people through the lens of themselves. Generally, talking in front of 40 people, like, let's say like 5-10 days from now, those people are going to be so focused on themselves, it won't matter what you were like in front of them. I could go see an artist live in concert that does badly. I could not tell you what artists I've seen right now that are bad live because I don't think about it. So performing badly, actually, when we think that those 40 people care a lot, that our fear of rejection is trying to keep us in survival mode from doing the thing to put ourselves out there. When really it doesn't matter. Those people don't care as much as you think they do. And our ego inflates that idea that more people care. And they care so much. They care as much as we do about how we show up. Also, the other side of it is that, so I was going to say this about the t-shirt. It works too. You talk in front of 40 people. Let's say you were awkward and like you stumbled over some words and somebody in the crowd felt more connected because it was more real. We feel the need to show up perfectly and control things, but to be honest, like sometimes we connect better when we are imperfect. That was what I actually built my first brand, kind of maybe my second or third brand. Was on imperfection, showing up imperfectly. I look back at my old podcasts. You can listen to my first podcasts. They were so awkward. They're still out there. And I kept them out there for that reason, that people could see that you could start wherever imperfectly and get to where you want to be. But you got to start. That's the hard part. What if they look at you and you're speaking and that's the problem, like so many people look at you? They still got so many other things going on in their mind. Some people can look at you and not be thinking about you at all. I'm funny, so they keep expecting I will say more interesting things, but there's nothing. Ooh. But that's the scary part, because when they expect something, you are speaking publicly. This is actually a self-expectation. This is actually a self-expectation. We project our own expectations onto other people. I can think that somebody I'm going out with works out a lot, so that I have to work out a lot. And if I don't work out a lot, they're going to judge me for that. When they might not have that expectation. Did those people come up to you and communicate, you were funny, I expect you to keep being funny? No? Then how do you know they have that expectation? And then I have a book, Feelings-Based Living, by Amira Sookram. You could just Google me and find me too. I don't know if it's the best to build connection on someone wanting to change you. Goes back to control. Whew. Where were we? Next was trying to perform. So we talked about trying to perform actually, because we talked about it with getting up in front of 40 people. And thinking that I have to perform for these people. I've performed a certain way and now they have the expectation. Now I think they have the expectation that I'm going to continue performing in that way. Who said they had the expectation? We did. I did. The ego, said that. And then the ego puts pressure on you to meet this invisible expectation. Okay? So trying to perform, you don't have to perform for anyone. So the person who came in here and talked about striving and was so adamant that we're supposed to strive, you don't have to. You don't have to strive for anything. It's a choice. We talked about choices and decisions earlier. Some people think that we have the choice to do things. Some people don't think we have free will. It's your choice. Everything is your choice. You don't have to choose to perform. The Libra is going to talk about control and manipulation, but specifically as people pleasing. I like the example of 40 people performing for them. You're performing for 40 people. You were funny already, and now you have the expectation that you have to continue being funny. This is a form of control and manipulating an audience. And it's a form of people pleasing. So again, at my job, I used to teach. And they had the expectation that I would continue teaching. One day I had to say, I'm not going to continue teaching. I'm going to actually shift my role to this. If you'll have me to do this, and I can work from home. And they said yes. I could have easily continued to do something because it pleased the other person, or I assumed that it would please the other person, while also neglecting my own needs and desires. This is a part of our ego trying to protect us too. Your needs and desires do matter, okay? So we try and control how other people see us, and that is people pleasing, but it's also a form of manipulation. And this all boils down to ego. If anyone has any questions about that, I'll talk about it. But I feel like that's it summed up. Okay. I had this TikTok recently where I was like, if you feel the need to reach out and text your ex or your ex situationship or whatever it is, this is where this comes in. Why? Why? I want you to really ask yourself why. What do you get out of it? Why are you doing it? Does it do anything for them or your relationship? Or are you doing it because something within you is telling you to do it? Does it benefit you in some way? Do you want to sleep with them? Do you want to go on a date with them again? Do you want their attention? Why? Why do you feel the need to do what you do? I want you to start questioning this. A lot of it boils down to my ego is telling me to do this for a reason. And it doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means you question why. Yo, can I just say, I started using this old highlighter. Yo, my highlighter looks good. Ego. Feeling wanted or feeling needed. To get a feeling from somebody and to do something to get that is a form of manipulating a situation. It's a form of our ego asking for something. If somebody's watching this on YouTube, they're going to be like, who's Kiev? Why are you saying this? Where are all these random things popping out from? I don't know if I want to edit it, but we'll see. How do we surpass our ego? Reflection journaling, asking yourself why, but also every month. I love to do this reflection of like, how did I feel in the past month? Why did I feel that way? Yeah, my ego gets its time to come out in a healthy way. It's like, why did I feel that way? Let my ego out through paper, through writing, instead of reacting emotionally to other people. Breathwork meditation, great way to surpass the ego, connect with the soul. What did somebody say earlier? The soul whispers, so we got to get quiet to listen to it. The soul whispers, so get quiet to listen to it. Self-compassion, speaking to yourself kindly when your ego does appear. When you react mentally and you're like, I'm so angry at that person for disrespecting me. Okay, I have the compassion to validate myself, to be compassionate with myself, to understand that my ego exists for a reason. I'm not going to bypass it. I'm going to sit with it. Inner child healing, the things that upset you as a child or that your parents did to you, is going to be a part of what plays out in your reactive ego wounds. Self-help laundry lists. Write out all the things you do for self-help. Say you read self-help books or self-improvement books or nonfiction all the time. Why are you doing that? Figure out your why. And is it really helping you? Are you really becoming the person you want to become? Where are you still lacking? Why do you feel like you're lacking? And then mindfulness. And then, at the end of my podcast, I always love to leave with a deep question. We talked about identity. You feel like, I am a social media marketer. I am ever changing. I am kind. I am beautiful. I am a podcaster. I live stream. These are all identities. I am a yogi. I work out. I drink a lot of water. Identities. Okay, I drink a lot of water isn't an identity really, but You get the point. Who are you? Let me do this. Who are you without your identities? I can't do a mic drop. It's too heavy. Who are you without your identities? Or without identity? Observer. I am just that. I saw him. I could say it. Observer and I am. I am observer. Observer, I love. Love, love, love. If we were not to be in our ego, we would just observe things. That is allowing. That is surrendering. That's deep. One of my favorite quotes. It's in my book, I believe. It should be in my book. Observe the fluctuations of the mind. Do not become them. All right, guys, I go live every Wednesday. Next Wednesday, I want to talk about dreams and imagination. Most likely, subject to change, but check on Wednesday on my stories. Sometime in the afternoon, I'll put up what the topic is, around what time I'll go live. It's going to be later next week because I have a call. Yeah. Next Wednesday, around 9 p.m. probably, we'll be talking about another topic. And I will get back to gaming when I get the Switch too, because right now, or like until I figure out my setup, I shouldn't have moved my setup. I have to figure it out now. Lighting, all of that. Need better lighting. If you want to send me gifts or my PayPal, Yogi Escape, buy my book. Those things help me get better lighting and figure this stuff out. Oh, I'm reading like 5 books right now. First of all, I'm reading my own book because I have to do the audiobook for it. Tomorrow I'm supposed to record the 2nd chapter. It's going so slowly, guys. Like, my apologies to myself. I even hate how slowly it's going. This goal is like, I can't find words right now because I'm like, there are some things I can't see on TikTok, but like inside I'm unalive working on this goal. Like, it's not my strength to edit audio, and when I'm recording it, all I can think about is how I have to edit it. I haven't worked around the apprehension I have around doing this, but okay. Next Wednesday, guys. I will see you then. Thanks for joining. I'll be here next week. I'll see if I can get this up on YouTube, cropping out what I can. We'll see how it goes. Bye.